All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first live audience recording of Between Two Wings. I am the series host, Emily Norman, and I am a social media marketing coordinator here at ForeFlight. And if you're not familiar with Between Two Wings, it is our new YouTube and podcast series where we are interviewing industry professionals, fellow pilots, and ForeFlighters just to get some insight on their experience between two wings. Today we have a very special guest, ForeFlight co-founder and CEO, Tyson Weihs. Tyson, if you just want to start off with any open remarks or anything before we jump into the questions, feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Emily, for having me on the show. Looking forward to it. Wow, it's really great to be back at Oshkosh. And I said almost 2020 and realized, no, it's 2021. It feels like we've stepped through a time warp. But really glad to be back at AirVenture to experience, everything we love about aviation, the camaraderie, the airplanes, the air shows. It's just great to be back. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. And so let's start with the history of ForeFlight, which starts way before the first app release. Tell us how you got into aviation.
So I got interested in aviation, I think, like a lot of young kids do, which is watching airplanes. And my grandfather flew in World War II in B-24s. And at a young age, I got into flight simulators. I think the seeds were planted really early. And then I remember a couple times in college going, walking up to a flight school and stepping in and being intimidated and not taking the plunge. And then I went to work for a company in South Carolina, actually, that was run by pilots. And the first week I was there, my boss took me up in his Mooney and let me fly. And I was hooked at that point. We did a little flight around the low country of South Carolina. And shortly after that, I started flying lessons. That was in 2002. But I didn't get my pilot's license until 2006 when I went to business school and between classes wanted to do something else as well. So got back into flying then, finally got my license in 2006. And while I was doing that, I started writing software for aviation.
Yeah, and so you're a pilot, you're starting to write software. What made you want to create your own aviation products?
Yeah, so I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. So my father was in the restaurant business. My mother was an artist. And they were, always, working hard to build their businesses. And so that was instilled in me at a young age. I actually, my first business was picking and selling mushrooms out of the woods behind our house. I did that to make a little extra money and sold them to a local produce distributor. And then had various enterprises throughout high school and college. And then when I was in business school, I was bored, actually, and started writing software to just help me as a pilot look up local weather conditions. As a student VFR pilot, weather is really important. Where can you go and can't go? And I wrote a little application for the web. And in the process of doing that, I came across an application called ForeFlight, which was actually started by Jason Miller, my co-founder, and his wife. And I said, hey, I've got something I've been working on, as do you. We should tie these things together. And so we started doing that. We started talking about, what we could do together because we had common interest in writing software and airplanes and, building things for pilots to use. And so we combined our two projects, and that's what led us to founding the company, ForeFlight.
Yeah, and so walk us through some of these pivotal moments in the history of ForeFlight. I know there was the iPad. Tell us about that and some other ones.
Yeah, so going way back, in 2006, I sent the first email to Jason and said, hey, we should do something together. And the idea that we had at the time was, well, we think we can build a better version of AirNav. So back, in the mid 2000s, there were some tools that pilots used, including AirNav and the AOP Internet Flight Planner, and we used DUOTs, if you can still remember DUOTs. Those were the things that we were using back then. And so we thought maybe we could build a better version of those things, something that was, internet focused instead of desktop focused. And while we were doing that, in January of 2007, Apple announced the iPhone. Mm-hmm. And at the moment, we didn't think about writing software for that. But when we actually went and bought one in the summer of 2007, when it came out, we were just blown away by the technology, right? First all touchscreen phone, the slide to unlock experience was really cool. And at the time there wasn't an app store. Like you couldn't actually build apps for the app store, but that was the first pivotal moment, was the invention of this new device, right? And I remember thinking back over history going, there's only so many times in the history of computers that something entirely new comes out. And so the iPhone was a whole new software platform that we could build applications for. So in about a week after the phone was released, we took the project that we were working on and we made it work in the web browser of the iPhone. Again, there were no apps, and so you just built a little website that you could access, and it would give you METARs and TAFs and airport information and things like that. So that was pivotal moment number one. The second pivotal moment was really the first big partnership that we created, and that was with AOPA. Mm-hmm. So back in 2008, after the App Store, actually, let me take a step back. The App Store was the second pivotal moment. So Apple called us in about January, February of 2008, and said, "Hey, we're going to make a development kit for the iPhone to allow people to write actual apps for the iPhone. So not just things that ran on a web browser, but an app that you could install on the phone. And we're going to create a way for you to distribute it, that's the App Store. And we're going to create a way for you to sell it and charge for that application." And so we became the first aviation app in the App Store in 2008. And we charged $75 for the application at that time. It was a one-time fee, and I'm sure all of our customers were like, "Yeah, bring that back."
Of course, yeah.
So it was a one-time fee, and I remember Apple taking us out to dinner the night before the App Store launched and said, "No, you can't charge $75 for an app. Nobody's going to pay that. It needs to be 99 cents or $1.99 because that's what everybody was charging for apps those days." And so now we'd already had a product that we were selling for a subscription. We went back to the one-time model, but anyway, we launched it in the App Store, and that was really the beginning of the business. So that was, pivotal moment number two, was being able to write software for this platform and put it in a marketplace that they would take care of the payments for. And then the next thing that happened was we partnered with AOPA. AOPA famously had a printed airport directory that they had made available to members for many years and would distribute that once a year. And so we approached them and proposed the idea of building an airport directory for AOPA that would run on the iPhone. So we partnered with AOPA on that. That started the transition from a print airport directory to a digital airport directory, and it introduced the ForeFlight brand to pilots for the first time in a big way. So that allowed a wide number of customers, the entire AOPA membership, to be introduced to ForeFlight, and that really started bringing customers into the mix. From there, we built a number of little applications. Like we built an application just for filing flight plan, and a separate application just for viewing charts, and a separate application for checklists. And so while this is getting kind of out of hand, we've got 5 different applications that we'd had to teach customers about and get them to download. We should put that in one application.
For sure.
And so in 2009, in December, we put all those applications into one. So that was the first time, that was the creation of what we now call the integrated app, right? Yeah. Where you have all these functions in one place. And we shipped that to the App Store in 2009, and we turned the subscription model back on. So we went from one time back to subscription, and we had no revenue for 30 days. Right? I remember that being kind of an emergency. Let's say you declared an emergency, or we need a place to land. Right? Yeah. No revenue for 30 days, and that was because we had a 30-day trial, which we've had ever since. And at the end of that, customers started buying the integrated application, which was great. And so that was January of 2010, and 2 months later, we didn't know that the iPad was yet to be unveiled and released. And we got another phone call from Apple, and they said, "We'd like you to come out to Cupertino. We've got something new that we're working on, and we want you to build your application for the iPad." And so we flew out to Cupertino and got to see the iPad for the first time. And we spent a couple of days there trying to get ForeFlight to run on the iPad, and made that happen. But at the time, I remember we were thinking, "Gosh, this iPad, I don't know if that's going to be anything. Maybe we shouldn't do it."
A little bit wrong.
Yeah, we've made some mistakes in the past, right? And when the iPad came out, we just thought, who's going to really buy these things? And then the cool thing that happened about 30 days after the first iPad is they released an iPad with a GPS in it. So that's
game changing for sure.
Yeah, so the iPad was game changing, and then putting a GPS in the iPad was game changing, because then you could put a dot on a map, and that's pretty valuable to pilots, right?
Yeah.
It's where am I? And then you could put charts on that, and started building things on top of that. So the iPad and the iPad with a GPS was a big disruption. And this theme of disruption has been consistent in the history of ForeFlight, where there's just been disruptive technology that's really changed the paradigm. And after the iPad came out, the next big one was ADS-B.
Yeah.
We can all remember probably, back in 2011, 2012, when they started talking about ADS-B, it was super confusing, and, were people going to buy it? But the one clever thing that the FAA did is they broadcast through the ADS-B network weather and traffic. And so we struck a partnership with Sporties, who's been a great partner of us for many years now, and a company called Apario, to build the first portable ADS-B receiver. And we launched that in 2012 at Sun and Fun. And that was a big hit. It was the first device you could put in the airplane. It was battery powered, no wires, had a GPS in it, so it could send GPS information to ForeFlight. It could send weather information and traffic information. And the traffic was actually pretty controversial back then, because there were no ADS-B equipped airplanes, right? Very few, and so it relied on the FAA to broadcast traffic data that they were collecting from secondary surveillance radar. But over time, as ADS-B adoption increased, we could see more and more traffic, including when flying. I'm sure everyone who flew into AirVenture with ForeFlight and a Century, for example, just could see a ton of traffic as far as they needed to. So that was a really big event, which is being able to put low-cost, subscription-free weather in the airplane. And now we have tens and tens of thousands of customers that fly around with this. So the creation of the ADS-B network, which was probably one of the biggest contributors to improvement in safety in aviation, was invented, and we leveraged that. And then there were some other things after that, like we partnered with Garmin in 2015 on avionics connectivity, and they've been a great partner of ours for many years to demonstrate ForeFlight and Garmin avionics connectivity to be able to push and pull flight plans and get ADS-B and traffic information like that. So it was another pivotal moment. And then we partnered with Jeppesen on bringing navigation charts in there. So it was just we were fortunate to have a really good string of technology innovations provide us a platform to innovate and deliver all this functionality to pilots.
Yeah, definitely. I know the latest kind of change is the integration with Boeing. Can you tell us a little about how that's going and how our ForeFlyers can actually benefit from this, or have so far?
Yeah, I think one of the things I can say is you can really start to see the benefits of having access to the data and products that Boeing creates. So now we've got the global Jeppesen data inside of ForeFlight. That's what powers all the flight planning and the maps, and that's been great. We just recently integrated their global NOTAM feed, so now we have the highest quality NOTAM data worldwide, and we just expanded that and added Australia recently. So that's been it's been good to see those innovations happen. And then we just recently created a first ever feature based on this high quality data, which is the ability to look up minima values for an approach. Yeah. So, one of the most important things you look at on an instrument approach plate is the DA and the MDA, or MDH. So we're able to now allow pilots to look up that information, and that's because we have these really high quality data sets in there. We're now part of a bigger organization, so with any integration like that, there's opportunities to learn from that. But I think the ForeFlight team, as you've seen over the past 24 months, since we were last here, we've had 24 releases, 100 new features, and it's just continuing at a breakneck pace. Which these are big challenges, and that is, I'm sure everybody out here knows about every feature of ForeFlight and uses all of them all the time, right?
Oh yeah. Well, if you want to learn more about them, come by Hangar C, and we will tell you all about them for sure.
Yeah, that wasn't a plan. But,
yeah.
So I think customers are really seeing the benefits of that integration, and then more customers around the world too. Boeing's got a really long history with militaries around the world, and the ForeFlight products are now used in many of them, including the Indian Air Force and the Canadian Air Force and the Royal Air Force. We've been able to widely distribute our products around the world much more quickly than we would have been able to ourselves. And we've really benefited from having that global footprint. And then we're doing some things for all markets. We actually build the version of the application that is used in commercial airliners around the world called Flight Deck Pro. So we get some of those features that we build for the commercial market coming to or across to the GA market or personal and business aviation, and some of the things we build for personal and business aviation end up in those other markets as well. So it's been a really good set of tools that we've been able to leverage to make the product better.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're all looking forward to seeing what's coming next. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So diving into more of the feature side, can you walk us through the process of you get an idea for a feature, you're developing it, and then it's shipping out to our customers?
Yeah, I think the process is relatively simple conceptually, which is we have an idea, we write up a short a briefing on that. What do we ultimately want to do? And then after that, it very quickly goes into a design iteration. We've got a really great design team. Our head of design is out here this week. And we quickly go through visual concepts for that application, for that feature, and that's an important part of the process where we look at all sorts of different ways to implement something. We put that in front of customers to get their feedback on that, and then we start building the skin essentially, right? Which is we build working prototypes of that particular feature. And then from there we go into development, and we iterate on the design as we're building it, because as you're building something, you get to feel the ergonomics of it. It's sort of like building an airplane. Does it fly right? How does it feel? Very similar experience at ForeFlight, which is very quickly get something into the hands of somebody to test, so they can feel the ergonomics and see if it's a best implementation for that thing that we're building. And over the years, we've been able to parallelize that process and allow more teams to do that, which is why you see this pace of features coming out every month. Is we've got many teams that are building things that either may be quick to build or long to build, but they always end up in a release every month. And so expanding and making that expanding the lanes of our highway effectively has been something we've been working on for a while.
Yeah, for sure. And is there one feature that may come off as simple in the app, but was actually a little intricate or tricky to implement correctly?
Oh, all of them.
All of them. There you go.
Something that is really neat, for example, is if you file an IFR flight plan, we produce all these routes for you, right? And it happens so fast that it looks really simple.
Yeah.
Right? And there's so many options there, but there's effectively a supercomputer behind that one little view that's producing all that information. So we've made it look pretty simple, but in actuality, there's a lot of math behind that. There's a lot of data processing that goes into that, and then there's a big computer science problem around how do you distribute all of the calculations to be able to return those things very, very quickly. So there's feature after feature like that in the application. Our terrain system, which is a really important feature for pilots. A lot of graphics work goes into that, and we've invented some really clever techniques for making that work really quickly, right? And so, I would say every one of our features may look like it was simple to build, but we do have a saying, which is there's no such thing as an easy feature.
Yeah.
Right. Even though you can make it look real easy and simple, all of them are a creative challenge.
For sure. And I know ForeFlight is not only trying to make flying more enjoyable, but safety is a huge concern. How are we making flying safer, and how can we continue to do so?
Yeah, I think by integrating all the things we have put in the product over the years, we've made it simpler for pilots to look at weather, for example, whether that's on the ground or in flight. We've made it easier to make calculations. So we're trying to eliminate fuel exhaustion, for example. Well, we do that with really high quality aircraft data that helps us produce really accurate answers. The hazard avoidance system, I think has kept a lot of pilots out of trouble. So the ability to color terrain, to warn them of a terrain that might be a threat that they could impact, and producing things like traffic alerts has been a big improvement to safety there. And then we've done a lot around computing runway distances, right? So there's been a lot of focus around runway incidents and accidents, overruns, underruns, and we really help produce accurate calculations for those sorts of things. So every time we go out and fly, I think we spot an opportunity to do things, to make things a little bit safer. And, we read accident reports to try to understand what sorts of things are getting pilots in trouble and think about whether there are things we can do to make an application that helps pilots return safely.
Yeah, and you had mentioned earlier, just in the past year since we've been at OSH, 24 releases, over 100 features. What was the decision or thought process behind switching to monthly releases, and what's kind of the benefit for the ForeFlighters out there?
Yeah, I think it's consistency and repetition. We've got a rhythm.
Yeah.
And so everybody on the team knows to expect things to happen at a certain date, right? The product team knows when they need to have their features complete by. The testing team then knows there's a regular rhythm around when they need to get engaged around what we call system testing, which is running through the application and making sure everything is working as expected and making sure that something we didn't cause something that was already working to now not work. It helps the marketing team build communications for the releases that we're putting out. So having this really consistent rhythm helps many teams in the company understand what will happen when and build their programming around it. And if a feature slips to the next month, we go, okay, well, that's fine. We'll just move that content that we created out a month and align it with that release. But it's created a consistency and a rhythm that helps everybody understand what will happen when.
For sure. And do you have any specific favorite features? I know we have so many out there, though. It's hard to pick.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what type of flying I'm doing.
Yeah.
My favorite feature is probably the fact that I've got all these things integrated into one place. But I've been doing a lot of flying in the mountains, and in that situation, being able to quickly touch out a route and then view terrain in the profile view, and then when I'm flying, find the lowest spots to fly through. That's a favorite feature. Right? If we're doing a long cross country and flying IFR, our flight planning experience now is just second to none, right? In terms of being able to find a route, look up information, get a briefing. That's awesome. And if I'm just flying VFR, looking at cloud tops, right, and cloud layers in our profile view, and understanding where the clouds are, so I can, figure out if I'm going to have a fun day or a more stressful one. So it really just depends on what I'm doing.
Yeah, and so I know we all do this. We have our own little ad-peak ways of using ForeFlight. What are some non-aviation ways that you use ForeFlight?
Oh, just checking weather every day.
Yeah.
Right? So if I'm not flying, I use our daily weather feature because it provides an hour-by-hour forecast and a 10-day forecast as well. So that's become my go-to weather app. If I'm sitting at my desk working, I would pull up our traffic layer and just watch airplanes fly. Like before I flew into Oshkosh, I was watching everyone fly down the VFR arrival, and just watching all the airplanes was super fun. That's more of an aviation geek out
exactly
feature, but it's just a way to see what's going on.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things is when I see people have internet traffic up on one side and ATC live on the other, and they're just sitting there watching it all play out in real time.
Yeah, it's great.
Exactly. So ForeFlight's obviously changed the aviation industry, GA specifically. How big of an impact do you think this really has?
Gosh, I don't know. I'd ask the audience, right? I mean, what do you think about how's ForeFlight changed your life? I think
I see some nodding, so I think that's a positive sign.
I think probably the biggest change is like if I don't have my iPad charged, that might be a no-go for that day, right? Like not having my iPad ready to go means I might not be able to fly. So. That's one way it's changed I think our aviation lives is it's an essential part and a co-pilot for us. So I think that's important. But a couple years ago, we got the AOPA Safety Award, and one of the things that they found as a result of iPads and ADS-B and weather and traffic is a real decrease in the accident rate. Right? So I think, and we were in our booth yesterday, and a gentleman came up and said, "Hey, you saved my life, right? Mm-hmm. And I just wanted you to know that." And we've had customers write in who've had electrical failures and use the iPad to basically shoot a localizer type approach because nothing else was working, right? And those are really heartfelt letters, and it's great to know that many of us might be walking around here because we've got the technology to help us fly more safely.
Yeah, that's definitely my favorite part about working here is just hearing all the stories and the impact that we truly have on all these pilots. So kind of switching to the general aviation industry, what do you think is going to be the next big thing?
Oh, man. I think we're living in a pretty amazing time technologically. If I look at what sort of life was like when I started flying in 2002, right? I mean, going to a computer and FBO and printing out, my weather briefing there and taking that in the airplane and not knowing what the weather was going to be like on the other side. It's fundamentally transformed. And when I look at, the first airplane I flew in and, what we fly in now, I don't know if I could go back from, flying behind, glass panels and electronic standby instruments and things like that. So, we've got a ton of technology at our fingertips. I think, one of the things that's really interesting is, and we're thinking about, how to present this to pilots is, are there things we can help you know about your own flying, to be predictive or provide analytics on how you're doing, or better help you understand the risks, because we as individual pilots are, we're the dispatch department, we're the flight planning department, we're the risk management department, and fly the airplane. So that's a lot of things to consider. But are there things we can help pilots understand about risks that may impact them better? And so those are the sorts of things we can do with technologies like machine learning and AI and the buzzwords that you hear about in the technology arena. Maybe you have to put some blockchain in there because that's just a hot topic. But it's really, can we understand more and help pilots, assess their flying skills and the risks that they have when they're going out and flying.
For sure. And before we go, you have to tell us what's next for ForeFlight.
Oh,
What can you tell us, I guess?
I always like to say, we don't want to spoil any surprises.
Yeah.
Right. But as we've shown over the past 24 months, there's a lot that we've cranked out, and there's a lot more in work and coming. So it's all on the theme of trying to make flying easier, or make flight planning and then navigating easier, so you can go out and just have a good time, right, and get your mission done.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Well, everyone, thank you so much for coming to this live recording of Between Two Wings with our CEO and co-founder, Tyson Weihs. If you want to hear more about Between Two Wings, check out ForeFlight.com/BetweenTwoWings, or look up our YouTube channel, or it's also available on all of the popular podcast platforms.